Um, I had chosen the topic in a way that I could tell my story um, as an educator and also as someone who has benefited from education. So I said education as a tool for poverty, either alleviation or eradication, my experience. What you see there is a picture of some of our kindergarteners and year six graduates from last academic year, and some of our kindergarten students right now at Pioneers International Academy. Now, I will go into why we established Pioneers International Academy, but I wanted you to also have a look at what education does look like where I come from. I live in Ghana. I was born here and I've lived here for most of my life, although I've worked in different places around the world. So I showed this picture and I said, this is how I learned about the computer, really, 31 years ago when I was um, at school. And it was the teacher on the board drawing a picture and showing us, this is a computer, this is what it looks like, this is where you press if you want to scroll down, without me actually touching the computer. Now, the sad aspect of it is, fast forward 31 years later, this is actually a picture from about 2 months ago of students in a community in Ghana learning about the computer. So it happened 31 years ago. Fast forward 31 years later, that's what is happening. And this was also a caption about a school in a rural area in Ghana. And this was a caption from the television, the station that showed this. It says, set up to fail when Ghana's rural poor, school poor. Basically, when you have education, the thought process is you're being set up for success, but your environment right here is actually showing that you are set up to fail. This picture that you see is actually something that is very common in many of the rural areas across my country, Ghana. When it rains, it means there's no school. When there's an animal passing there, it means everybody is going to look at the animal. If the weather changes, it means you will not have education. But then, this is always not the case. What the picture you see right now is actually also a school in Ghana. It's called Ghana International School. It's been around since 1955. And it is as good as any private high-end school you find anywhere in the world. But this is a country with 29 million people, right? And this is a school that, having been around for more than 60 years, only take 1,410. So what it means is that if you want that real quality of education that you can find wherever you are in the world, and GIS is your school, guess what? You have to be a Ghanaian that can afford the equivalent of $22,000. And right now, out of that population, only 1,410 people can afford that. And it's not only just Ghanaians, it has 58 nationalities. So just so you have an idea of when we talk about education, we know what is really good. We know what can give, opportunities, but we also know what is the state right now. So how does a child without education fare? How does a child without education fare? So I take you to what some of the research has shown, and basically looking at the benefits of education. So this is by Child Fund International. And some of the things that they've showcased here is, one, education improves food security and reduces malnutrition. Guess what? If you are educated and you're a farmer, for instance, we know you will practice better farming techniques, right? If you're educated and you know diseases, you know how to protect yourself. For instance, a couple of years ago, we had Ebola virus in West Africa, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and there were communities that Ebola, I mean, is highly contagious. But because of lack of education, people thought it was a spiritual disease. There were people that actually will go and bathe in the water that people who had Ebola had bathed in, under the impression that they were going to get well. You know, they were going to be exorcised from what was happening. And that just tells you it's lack of education, right? Now, when it comes to education, improve gender and equity, I mean, go to the communities that you have young women, particularly, who are getting married because of lack of education. And if you see what microfinance has done, for instance, what is done over the years is where it has targeted young women who did not have education, and because now they have tools, they have either educated themselves or their children. You've noticed that that vicious cycle of poverty is turning around. So these are some of the benefits that we know that education gives. Now, I want to just switch and introduce you to Aloysius. Aloysius is someone I know, an entrepreneur, and I want to show his story with regards to what education can do. So Aloysius was born in Ghana, went to a regular school in Ghana, actually lived in a village because when his parents separated, he went and stayed with his auntie. And his auntie was a farmer. And what he noticed was that the farmers, the small-scale farmers, struggled a lot. One of the challenges they had, for instance, was it was mainly subsistence farming. And also where they produce a lot and you had a bumper harvest, what happened is you did not determine your prices. So your food would either go rotten and, you know, at the end of the day, you pray for rain to get your harvest. Your harvest comes, you cannot sell. So that vicious cycle of education affects you. But guess what? This is what he was able to do because he was educated. He launched Farmer Line, and Farmer Line does something that is interesting. Over the years, the few years that Farmer Line has been around, they've worked with more than 200,000 farmers. Now, not just in Ghana, in about 7 other countries. And what they do is, one, they help them source, like they put them in touch with people who buy the food that they produce. They also help them implement things that will enable them have a better, you know, farming in terms of their products. They also provide like new technologies that farmers can literally track their production. What am I producing? What diseases are in the environment that would affect me? Who are the people who are likely to buy what I produce? What do they need? And they link it to those producers as well. So for instance, one of these organizations is Tuton, a French trading company that buys cocoa. And what they have done is they work with local farmers here, put them in touch. Tuton had approached them and said, we want to work with these farmers, but we need some information. We need to make sure that we actually know that they are producing the right cocoa, they are implementing the right processes that we need, and we want to be able to see what happens on a daily basis or whichever way we can see it. And what Farmer Line did was, he said, they worked with Tuton to create custom mapping and data visualization software to enable them to, even though it's a company that is based in France, understand what each farmer that was ultimately producing some of their cocoa was doing, right? And for me, it is this young man whose auntie was a small-scale farmer that would have struggled, but because of education, he knew some of the tools that could make a change. And because he had education, he was able to provide for not just now one auntie, but several farmers. And this is the other sweet thing. So when you go to Farmer Line, it's not just Aloysius, it's other people of Aloysius' caliber, educated in Ghana, who have also joined this team to replicate that impact. So basically, from just Aloysius having that education that the auntie didn't have, the ripple effect is Farmer Line. but multiple Aloysiuses who are doing things that can make an impact. So I say here, pay attention to the ripple effect of Aloysius education. Then I come back to my story. So I am the fifth child of 7 children, 1 mom, 1 dad. My dad always tells us that he actually wanted 10, but after a while my mom said no, so he ended up on 7. And for us, for my parents, each of them were the first in their families to go to school. My mom, 5 girls, and literally they will commute 3 miles each way to go to school. The 4 of the girls drop out, my mom stayed. My dad was the last child, and he also went to school. So they actually met in school when they were about 10 years old. Now they are 76, and they've been together since then. But because my parents had education, there were certain things they always taught us. So in Ghana, we speak a language called Ewe. That is a language that is spoken in Ghana, in Togo, and in Benin, 3 countries that sort of follow Ghana. Ghana, Togo, Benin. We are all on the southern part of the Gulf of Guinea. And so the language my parents spoke is Ewe. And my father used to say something. He said, in this world, there are 3 things that you need. Agbala, Ngududu, Mau. Now let me explain this to you. Agbala means books. My father would say, without books, you will perish. He quotes the Bible and said, even the Bible said, for lack of knowledge, you perish. So in our house, those days, if you wanted to cheat and be smart with mom and dad, you just went and said, oh, I need this book, I need this book. And you get the money to go and buy it. So that's what we did. But right from day one, we knew Agbala was important. Then Nududu means food. And my father would say that, you know what, you have to work hard to put food on the table of the people that you love. And you cannot really achieve much when you don't have the skills to be smart both on the streets and in the office. So you need Agbala, and then with that you get Nududu. And Mawu means God. My father always said, with God all things are possible. So his focus was that, okay, all his 7 children will get Agbala, Nududu, and Mawu. And he was the old school. If yourself or your parents were in that generation, basically what they did was you either became a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, a pharmacist, and all that. So that's the tradition. That's what we did. We got 3 lawyers, a teacher, a pharmacist, an engineer, and a doctor. So basically, this is just a couple of generations. My father and my mom's siblings not having gone to school, but my parents being the only people who went to school. And because of that, they determine a new trajectory for their children and beyond. So guess what? You teach what you know. My children know that at minimum, school is important. They know that at minimum, Agbala is important. We must read. And with that, I'm able to make an impact similar to Aloysius. And then my expectation is that all things being equal, my children will be able to do that as well. So we used to call our house the transit quarters for education. So imagine a home with mom and dad with 7 children, and at every point in time, there's somebody from your auntie, your uncle in the house. So at every point in time, sometimes we are about 15, 17, 20 in that house. So we call our house the transit quarters. Basically, somebody in the village wants to go to school. They call my mom, they call her teacher. Teacher, this person wants to go to school. They bring the person, or CCK, my father, that's the short form of his name. Somebody wants to go to school, then they bring the person. So the people you see here, with the exception of 2 of these, are people who came to our house so that they could have education. So Kujovi is actually a cousin, and he is as old as my oldest brother. So a little over, above 45, thereabout. And we sent them both to the same school, but Kujovi didn't want to go to school. So he dropped out. And this is what happened to him. My brother who went is a pharmacist. He's leading one of the regional hospitals in the country. His kids are now in university, and he's established several pharmacy shops around. He's employing people. Kujovi is still in the village. He drives a bus. it's almost like that trajectory that education gave my brother didn't give Kujovi. The same with Esinam. Esinam also came and stayed with us. She left. She became a young mother. She stayed in the village. She's a young mom of 6. So Esinam could have been me talking to you right now, but because she dropped out of school, she's still in the village doing that. Now, the other people are people that their lives is a little different. So Severine was somebody who was actually my classmate in our primary school. So I went to a local primary school, a little notch above the one under the tree, right? And Severine's mother was a single parent that had 2 children, and she was a nurse orderly at the hospital. So those people that, if you're not well, they clean after you and all that, right? Now, the challenge with Severine's mother was she could not afford what my parents could. They were teachers, my parents. So at least they could buy books for me. I could go and my parents could tutor me. She couldn't give that to Severine. So let's fast forward several years after leaving primary school in 2004. Here I am. I'm at one of the hotels in Ghana. I am the corporate attorney for a financial institution. We are holding our board meeting, and Severine is the person cleaning the floor. She sees me, and momentarily, there's that shock on both of our faces. And I immediately remember that this was Severine, this is my friend, and she's where she is because her mom could not give her what I had. The same with Farida. Farida was in our class. She's a petty trader in the market, and also because she didn't have that. But Afachao is actually a cousin who also stayed with us. But he, unlike the first 2, pursued education. So guess what? He's a teacher. He got his 5 siblings. They used to have a lot of children then. He got his 5 siblings, also educated, and all of them, their trajectory is changing. So for me, the story of Severine particularly was something that always bothered me. Like I still remember the look on her face and on my face, and I still remember going back to when we were kids in my mind. So when I was a student at Colorado State University, this was about 8 years ago. I had gone back to do my MBA. And it was a course called Global Social and Sustainable Enterprise Development. And the question was asked in typical American fashion, what are some of what sucks in the world? Like, what are you angry about? What don't you like about the world? And a lot of people mentioned different issues. You know, some people mentioned poverty. Some people mentioned lack of education. Some people mentioned diseases. Some people mentioned the planet, the fact that we're not taking care of our planet. And some people mentioned different things. And I remember I said, education, right? And I said, well, we don't have access to quality and affordable education. So Professor Hadnat then asked, so what are some of the solutions? And we gave a lot of different solutions. And I remember him coming to stand right in front of me and said, Esther, so what are you going to do about it? And it was like, oh, wow, I wasn't expecting that, because I had gone to business school with the intent of actually finding what entrepreneurs did for different issues. And then I wanted to sort of chronicle it, like the encyclopedia of how to do it, how it was done. So that was my thought process. So when you say, what are you going to do about it? I was like, okay, maybe I could do something. So I decided to think about, I started thinking about what could we do to provide access to quality education? I mean, it has since changed. And my thought process was, okay, shipping container schools is cheap to build. Maybe with that, prices will be low, you know, very simplistic, but it morphed over time. Now, the cool thing about it is, and that's what I love about America, that no idea is stupid, right? So I was encouraged and said, think more about it. So there was an opportunity to apply and participate in the business plan competition. And I had now another person also from Ghana, Afrani, and a couple of people from a couple of other students from the States. And we had discussed what we could do together, about education. And I applied for this business plan competition and I won. So that's me with the award. And then our director of the business school and the director of our program at that time. Then I was like, oh, I won this award. It means, this idea is not a bad idea. So immediately I knew I could be part of the solution. Then came the big thing. At that time, we thought, okay, we will come back to Ghana, or I will come back to Ghana. I will easily find $250,000. I was going to start these schools, and I was going to, change things all over the world. Well, I realized quickly things doesn't happen that way. So I actually, when I returned to Africa, I didn't go to Ghana. I went to Uganda. And then I was in charge of Africa operations for Finca International, traveling around the world. And you notice that the issue of education could not, access to education would not go away. Because wherever I went to these countries, I saw people that reminded me of Severin. And the only reason why they were taking that $100 loan was because they had not got education. They had not got the opportunities, right? So even though that $100 loan was important, how could I help make that difference? So one day, I remember very well, I was now in Nigeria. I had gone there to help start a new microfinance bank. And we were walking through the markets, talking to people. And I just suddenly asked myself, why am I doing this? I could easily go to Ghana and do this with my own, what I want to do with education. I go to Ghana, talk to people, figure this out. And it was almost like an aha moment. And 2 weeks later, this is what happened. Be careful what you wish for. The board had a meeting and decided, Esther, you're too expensive. We can't afford you anymore. So one option, you either go to this country where they can afford you, or you find your way out. I was like, okay, I'm not sure I want to go back to any other country. I will go to Ghana. So then I came back to Ghana. And within 3 months, we established Pioneers. Now, one thing that you will notice is that the government, for instance, is poised on establishing, schools at the lower level. So there's a universal free primary education, which is good. But if you want a child like Esther and Severin to achieve the best that they can possibly do, a school under a mango tree will not cut it. So quality is very important. So just saying we are giving education to 1 million children and it's free, it's not enough if they go under the mango tree. Quality is very important. So here, when we came to start Pioneers, I knew that we could not do the mango tree, right? We could not do this. I also knew that we could not do GIS because people could not afford it. I knew that at minimum, we had to do a notch above the school you see in Nairobi, where there are about maybe 100 kids in one classroom, some standing, about 5 of them on one single desk. We had to go a notch above. So what you see here is Pioneers International Academy with the yellow and blue. If you cannot see my arrow, that's Pioneers. And basically, what I did was, I think a lot of entrepreneurs do that. I literally sold what I owned, my property. I pestered family friends, and I emptied all the investment that I had. I tried fundraising. Bless my friends. They were the ones who would donate, GoFundMe. I tried grant funding. It wasn't always successful. But I came to Ghana exactly 3 years ago, and the building you see here on the right is the first building we rented, right? So with having sold property, having divested my investment, we rented this first building as our school. And this is what happened. Between September and January, we had opened our school to the community. Now, let me take you back. Before establishing Pioneers and during the business plan competition, we had talked to parents and asked the question, what sort of education are you looking for your children? And they had said that, this current education system where we learn by rote, it's not cutting it. When our kids go to end up and they go into the business environment, we are told they are not good. In fact, we spoke to some business people and they're like, people come, they cannot think. So we knew that it had to be a curriculum that challenged people on how to think. I used to tell people, nobody really asked me, what do you think? Until I went to do my first master's in England, where Dr. DeLacy said, well, Miss Dzakpasu, what do you think about this? And momentarily I was lost because I don't remember anybody asking me, what do you think? So when we were looking at the curriculum, we knew it had to be one that enabled thinking. And Cambridge International Curriculum appeared to be one that, the entry point for us was possible because of the cost, it wasn't so high. And that was something that we looked for. We also knew that we had to prepare people to make an impact. So we needed an education that would create more Aloysius, would create more Esthers, right? And to do that, the curriculum was just the minimum. We had to focus on leadership, community engagement, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. So those were all things that were informing us in coming to Pioneers. So with that, when I was selling the property, pestering people also, the first set of people we were looking for, individuals who were extremely passionate about education. In fact, our adverts was, are you passionate about education? Do you want to make a change? Blah, blah, blah. We are looking for, etc. So we found these two people, amazing people, who were passionate about education, who were extremely smart, and who were trainable. And then together, we started this thing called Pioneers. For myself, after having left the job with no paycheck, I had to take up the job of teaching at the university, and also, even as at now, I still teach people in China just so I can continue with the work. But when we started, it wasn't very easy. We learned certain things. So suddenly realized that passion is not enough. Even selling your property to start is not enough. You really need to know how to navigate the system. And nobody taught me that, I thought I was an attorney, so at least if I knew the law, I'll figure things out, how to make this work in Ghana. Well, guess what? So for those of you who are already familiar with law, you will notice there's something we call contract of employment and contract for employment. Of employment, the person is your employee. For employment, the person is your contractor. Now, guess what? If the person is your contractor, you are not liable for their paying all their social security, their medical, and all that. It's a private contractor, they pay all that, right? So one of the ways that is easy to start a business is you hire a contractor for a period of time, they charge you a fee, they manage their own finances, and then their taxes and the rest. And after a while, you see the business is viable, then you can employ people. I mean, I had done it for people when I was wearing my legal hat. So I thought for the first 6 months, we will do that. Guess what? We hired individuals and said for 6 months, you are an independent contractor, you're helping us establish Pioneers, we will do this, and based on performance and the business doing well, we will give you a contract of employment. Then the government knocked on our door and said, well, you cannot do that because it's education. You need people to teach your children for blah, blah, blah. So suddenly, what happened is a cost that you had planned to spend, call it $100, was suddenly $150. Now, it wasn't just the money. I mean, I would have gone and fought with it in court. But in Ghana, when you take your matter to court, it is a matter that will drag on for 4 years. When you are trying to start a business, you can't do that. So basically, instead of having contractors for the first 6 months, we ended up having employees, which increased our cost. I also didn't realize that when you're borrowing from the bank, it was really hard. You know, banks will either not lend to you, or when they will lend to you, you're looking at a minimum of 28% per annum, 28% per annum. And that is when you're a very good customer. So this is what even happened. At one point, we needed money. The bank said, well, you have about $5,000 here. So we will give you 80% of that amount that you have here. So they held on to our $5,000 and they gave us the equivalent of $4,000 at 20% interest so that we could go and do our business. How can a business survive like that? And then rent. So this building that was so dilapidated, the landlady comes and said, well, you have to pay 2 years rent. 2 years rent? Yes. We had no choice. We paid it. So that was also one of the things we had to learn quickly. And then, you know, I had told you that we found people who were very passionate about education and then very entrepreneurial. One of the things that I also learned was when you find an enterprising individual, guess what? They are very enterprising. They won't stay with you for a long time. So unless there is an opportunity for them to expand their scope within the shortest possible time, they will leave. So you have to have a good mix. And I learned that also quickly. And I thought that with our passion for education and our having talked to parents and the fact that we're going to make an impact, parents will suddenly come on board and everything will be, you know, they call hunky-dory, fun, you know. No, it wasn't like that. We had a list of things parents will come. I want this, I want this, I want this. But then it wasn't just, you know, it wasn't like give and take. I expect everything. Everything is your responsibility. So we started asking ourselves, are we wrong about the parents? Are we attracting the wrong people? Are we not communicating what is required? And then with time, we found that when parents actually understood the vision and they bought into it and they saw it as a partnership, then they were willing to support us. I had also said that we had talked about Cambridge accreditation as the best way to go. Cambridge International, linked to University of Cambridge, is highly respected. The curriculum itself enhances, you know, it focuses on creativity, critical thinking. We thought all that was important. What we didn't realize was that whether you were a school with 10 children or you were a school with 1,000 children, you all pay the same. So you want to be a Cambridge school, you have to pay that. So that was also there. Now, this is what we've achieved so far. We have an early childhood, we have a primary school, and now this September, we started our secondary school. We have a team of 17 children, 17 team members, which include mostly teachers and a couple of auxiliary workers. Some of our achievements so far include the fact that we are accredited. Some schools tried for so many years before they get that opportunity. Our learners sat for the checkpoint examination and they excelled. The checkpoint examination is the examination they write before they go to the equivalent of middle school. They excelled. We started at secondary school, and because we want to, so our approach is to replicate our schools in areas of need. So what we do is, it's not just one pioneers. I think Peter was talking about something about franchising. So it's not more like franchising. For us, it's like multiple branches of pioneers. So for this community, once the schools have become financially and operationally sustainable, then what we do is we introduce scholarships within the community to help kids within the community. And then we are also having really good feedback. So the picture you see here, for instance, is during the summer, we had a coding class for the community. It was open to every child within the community who wanted to attend, obviously at a fee, but it was something that was beneficial, and because of that, parents are asking for it more. Like, can we do it again? Now, in terms of our growth plans, we want to saturate particularly areas where comparable schools do not exist. So there will be pioneers. Come next year, we'll have pioneers in another location, and the pioneers all around Ghana, so that people will have access to quality and affordable education. Now, there are several ways education can indeed help reduce poverty. I showed it earlier on in the first slide by Child International Fund, where they showed where education will help with reducing, education will help with enabling people to have better farming or understanding of, if they were farmers, how to grow their businesses, or if they were people who were dealing with health issues, understand how to deal with their health issues. I mean, there's some global partnership for education says education helps save the planet, that if people are educated, they will understand, and they were farmers, for instance, they will understand what they need to do to avoid pollution, etc., etc. So education for me really is important. Now, for you as an individual, you may ask yourself, what can I do? What can I do with regards to education? How can I make an impact? Typically, governments are those that provide schools. When you come to Ghana, for instance, we have the public schools, they're about 70%, the private schools, 31%. Now, the reason why parents will send their kids to the private schools is the standards in majority of the government schools have fallen. They are not churning the best. So parents would want to have some quality education when they can afford it, right? But for this type of education, the individuals who do it are mostly, I call them edupreneurs, people who are passionate about education, who want to make a change, who want to make an impact. And it is very difficult for them, like people like me, right? So one, I say for government, if you could influence the government, like if you were the likes of Microsoft, and you could actually influence the government with regards to education, yes, go for it, do that. But in certain situations where you don't have even government focusing a lot of education, and you have individuals like myself, there's so many ways you can help. For instance, one of the challenges I had was finding people to mentor me. When I came, I wanted to talk to other schools I thought was doing well, so they could share the ideas, but people thought it was competition. So I ended up finding people who were in different parts of the world to assist rather. Also, just understanding business, that this is a social enterprise, but what I was saying is, how can you help? There's so many ways you can help. So for instance, do you have tools to support institutions find grants, loans, and investment? You can support in that way. Can you find individuals who can give loans, not at 28%, or people who can invest, social investors who will invest and help expand, people who want to put equity in education. Those are ways that you can help. Sometimes also it's volunteers. You have individuals who want to volunteer with schools, that is also a way that you can help. Because ultimately, if we want to change the trajectory of lives of many, I strongly believe education, at least from my own experience, is a key. It's a key to make that happen. And to do that required investment, required education, and required continuous support for the people who do that to make it happen. The picture you see up here is actually Rwanda. I mean, Rwanda unfortunately had the genocide, but after the genocide, one of the things that Paul Kagame is focused on is ensuring that Rwanda has one of the best education in the world. And he says that in some years to come, Rwanda will be exporting, its graduates to the rest of the world. And if you see their science lab that they're in, it's comparable to anywhere in the world, right? And we need more people. We need kids to be in more environment like that, to be able to achieve their own their God-given, talents, and to be able to make an impact themselves. So basically, that is my take on how education can help us eradicate either poverty or even reduce it, or make people make the impact that they are called to do on this planet. So thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Okay, could you unshare your screen, please? And thank you. Now, can we invite Esther? Can we invite the rest of the people online to comment? Shara, do you have a comment on Esther's presentation?
Sure, it's more of a comment than a question. I just wanted to say I'm really inspired by you and everything that you've done. Like, oh my goodness. Like, I'm just more like in awe of everything that you've done and everything that you're doing. So, yeah, I'm not often speechless, but you have me speechless.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for taking the time to share all that with us, especially since it's so late where you are. Like, you actually stayed up to talk to us. So like, I really appreciate that. It's always amazing to hear people's stories about what they're working on, and big heart people like you, people that are doing it because it means a lot to you, and you're giving back, to your community and to the kids, and that's amazing. So
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd like to support that and say, how many hours a day do you work? 23 or 24?
Too long. Not 24 hours though, but it's still long hours. I mean, the good thing is now I have a team in place. So at our early childhood, I have a team lead in place who makes things happen. At the primary school, I have a team lead who makes things happen. We just started our secondary school, so it's sort of, I need to be there. And then because I also need to make money to support it, I have to work. So yeah, too many hours, but it's getting better. I was having a conversation with my team 2 weeks ago, and I said, when we started Pioneers, there was a time I could not even leave for 15 minutes because you left and you thought things were in disarray. But now I can be away for a week, or and not worry. I can be away and not worry. It's not all the way up there yet, but it's getting better. Yeah.
So Esther, is any of the teaching done online, or is it all in classrooms?
At the moment, everything is in the classroom. Everything is in the classroom, unless with the secondary school, when they have projects, then they request that you can either do this online, but it's actually, the actual teaching in Pioneers is classroom-based, it's face-to-face.
Because there's got to be a lot of kids who are in rural communities who, maybe work on farms, who don't have easy access to get into town for school.
Right. So for our current schools, actually, they are in town. Our current school is in town. And the reason also is we have to be able to be sustainable, to be able to extend in certain areas. So right now, if we were a school based in the rural areas, the income level is so low that you really have to give it away. So right now you need to be able to make money somewhere and, like cross-subsidize. And so in terms of rural areas, we are not even in the rural areas yet. But what we do is we support schools in those areas. So there are 2 schools. These are orphanages that we have adopted. And what we do is we hired a teacher for them. So somebody is a teacher that we pay their salary. And then from time to time, we request our parents and our children to help us raise money, and we make donations. So that is how we've been supporting now. But to actually teach in the rural areas, we are not there yet. We're not there yet.
Do you have any courses or programs on self-employment or entrepreneurship?
We for which category? For people who are older or for anybody at all? Did you hear me?
Well, you froze there.
Oh, I froze? Okay. I was asking, you asked whether we have courses in entrepreneurship or self-employment.
Right.
We don't have any course like that called entrepreneurship or self-employment. However, for the secondary school, we've introduced a program called Global Perspectives, where it's about different things that you actually like focus on. So, for instance, we've talked about we've tried to understand globalization and its effects. We've tried to understand migration and its effects. We've tried to understand poverty and its effects in that. But it's not a program in entrepreneurship. So back to that, no, we don't have a program like that. What were you thinking? Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I'm seeing it now. We use a program over here called Junior Achievement. I don't know whether you've heard of Junior Achievement.
Yeah,
And so I've run programs in secondary schools for students grade 9 through grade 12. And Junior Achievement is where I've had them actually plan a business and then do a pitch competition. And then the school, what they do is they, in the gymnasium, set up table booths for the kids to actually demonstrate their products and their services. And they invite the parents and the other classes and the community to attend a full day session with these youth entrepreneurs who have come up with an idea or a product or a service.
Okay. Was this something that you started, or this is something that is I can Google and find out more?
Oh, definitely you can Google.
Okay.
Junior Achievement.
Junior Achievement. Okay, I'll look into that. It's actually, yeah, it will be particularly for the secondary school. It will actually be good because one of the things is like I knew nothing about entrepreneurship, and it's you can leapfrog so many things if you know that from the early stages. So yeah, I'll look that up.
Well, why I bring it up, I'll tell you why I bring it up. I don't know. Have you heard of GoFundMe?
Yes, that was one of our fundraising tools.
They ran a little campaign for kids.
Oh.
And a 7-year-old kid went to his closet and he looked on his closet and he said, "Mom, I got a lot of extra clothes here." And he said, "I'd like to give those extra clothes to kids who have cancer in hospitals. I'd like to give it to Ronald McDonald House. I'd like to give it to different places." And GoFundMe liked the idea so much that they gave him $1,000 to pursue that idea. An 11-year-old girl on her way to school saw a homeless woman lying in the street. And she went home and she said, "Mom, I want to create a kit for homeless people." And she got $1,000 to support that activity. So I guess what I'm trying to suggest is these kids in high school can come up with some very creative ideas if you provide the place for them to be creative, be innovative, contribute to solving problems. And they really are cool. And that's why we do the social innovation jams. And we've been amazed what these kids have come up with.
Thank you. Yeah.
They can teach their parents.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you're right. And you know, they're so young, so they're so creative. You know, the world hasn't affected them yet.
Hey, Esther. I just sent you a message in the chat. I was just wondering if you had ever heard of the organization 1 Million Teachers. The founder it's African owned, it's Hakeem Subair. And he was, coincidentally, he was just in Ghana. And they're doing some really cool stuff with training teachers and turning them into lifelong learners and giving them tools. Because I saw a talk, he's actually local. I saw him give a talk about, he was talking about increasing the quality of education in Africa. And that's why he created the organization. So have you heard of him or heard of that organization?
No, 1 Million Teachers, no.
Yeah, you might want to check them out. I've met him. He's a really, really great person. Their organization is really awesome. And although they're over here, their whole purpose is like basically trying to fundraise, I think more so on this side, but then building up the capacity in different countries in Africa and increasing, yeah, really like assisting the teachers. So if you can see it in the chat, like, you know, feel free to check it out.
Yeah, I will. Thank you. Oh, thank you. I've seen it. Yeah, thank you. Let me take it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Catherine, we can't hear you.
You're muted.
Thank you. I'm muting myself. I'm chattering away here. Thanks, Esther. I'm saying, you know, it's time for you to go to bed. It's a bit late.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry about the turn up, but as I say, this will all go out to all of our members and others. So they will view it in their own good time. And if you're available for the 4th Monday, if you can come back and we can have a broader discussion on education, and also some of the people who view this video might have some ideas for you. And, you know, like Shara, she's come up with some good stuff, and Peter. So, you know, it may be worth your while having been up this late and giving us all these wonderful talks about everything. Anyway, thank you so much.